Weigh-In is brought to you by our stable of sponsors. Very warm welcome to Weigh-In. Great to have your company on our show this morning, and we've had an eventful weekend, haven't we? We're going to be getting into all of that when it comes to Weigh-In on your Monday. Michael, lots to talk about, as we always say, but there's some serious issues to go through this morning, and also an acknowledgement of Group 1 success.
Yeah, there's hi Ian, big hi to everybody watching around Australasia. Let's get straight to it. The TAB Classic at Trentham on Saturday was unsatisfactory. You deserve better. The horses deserve better. The trainers, the jockeys, the connections, and most importantly to me, the punters deserve better. It was a complete stuff up. It was a very small mistake, and there's no, that we know of, human error, which has had enormous repercussions. It's serious, and we're going to talk about it in a serious way. Bruce Sharrock from NZTR is going to join us. What we'll do is go to the race, and then we'll go part by part what happened after the false start. There was a winner. It deserves our respect, Emily, so we'll get to that first, but we are going to methodically pull apart the parts of the TAB Classic false start and what happened next, and why you're not getting your money back. Okay, but there was a winner, and there was a second attempt, and a worthy winner.
Yeah, it was a worthy winner. Let's rewind the clock and have a look at Desert Lightning taking out the TAB Classic.
Desert Lightning having a look over on the outside and trying to level now. Faraleone, Flower of Wanaka pushing up on the inside. Now Habana starting to run home really well over on the outside of these. Back behind them then Agon's back on the fence. Desert Lightning got to the lead from Faraleone, and then over on the outside Habana. Fashion Chuff still there as Flower of Wanaka and Agon, and wide out Molt Time. Desert Lightning's in front down to the line, and Desert Lightning will win. Very close thereafter. Faraleone, Molt Time, Flying Agon, Habana behind them, Flower of Wanaka. Then we had Bellado Boy. With that, well,
it was a very well-deserved win for Desert Lightning, and big congratulations to all the connections. Something that needs to be mentioned is Vinny's ride, because it was supreme, wasn't it?
Beautiful ride. Now, he's a senior and established Group 1 rider. I think he summed up what happened with the false start, and he thought there could be some horses in here I don't want to be behind, who might be a bit tired. Let's take luck out of play. It was what you expect from someone who's been around the traps. Beautiful ride. Well prepared by Peter and Dawn Williams, because he only had 2 runs heading into it. They signalled this as a race they would chase, because he's been a very good Group 1 horse.
He has, yeah.
He ran second to Pierre after being wide in the 2,000 guineas last year. Not a Group 1, but he ran second to Prowess in the Karaka Million 3-year-old, which was probably the form race of the entire country last year. So he's been a good horse. He beat Waitak in the Avondale Guineas. So smart training from them. Well done to Barneswood Farms. I don't want to by any means disparage what happened with the horse, because he's a good horse, and he'll head to the Aotearoa Classic. Second horse was excellent. So was the third horse, Molt Time, and Agon was luckless. So everybody deserved the placings they got. But a whole lot of other horses, Emily, didn't deserve what they get, because what we saw was a false start, and it was jarringly obvious that the 14 horses who jumped ended up going too far, and the horses who didn't jump, here's the first take, the outside 3 stalls, the horses do not jump, we'll get to that in a second. Those 3 horses ran first, second and fourth. You can't miss that. There they are still in the stalls. They didn't use any energy, and very jarringly, even though they were all in the market, they are the horses who got 1, 2 and 4. So clearly the horses you see moving there and jumping were disadvantaged by running between 400 and 600 metres.
It effectively is a jump out, isn't it? Is what they've done, jumping out of the gates that first time.
Well, you're a horse person and I'm not, but they've used energy, and they've used energy, and then they've had to come back around. So what's happened after the false start is, first we'll go through it piece by piece. The horses have come back and been checked by a vet. So they have been cleared to start. That's standard racing practice for 1 horse jumping out of a gate. In this case, it was 14. Then they've tested the gates, which didn't work. So there's 14 standard gates and then supplementary gates for a field bigger than 14. Most fields aren't bigger than 14. They've tested those and they haven't worked. So one would suggest it's a malfunction, potentially electrical, between the 14 normal gates and the add-on gates. Tested again, then they did start working after a bit of mucking around. They changed a cable, turned something upside down. I don't know how that's supposed to work, but it did. Then they've ruled that the race will go ahead. So the stewards said, had any of the trainers or any of the jockeys behind the gates come to them and said, no, I don't think I want to start, which they're not going to do in a Group 1. Had they said that, that horse would have been late scratched. So the 14 horses have been ruled eligible to start by the vet. The jockeys haven't said, no, my one's too pumped up, its heart's going too quick. And the jockeys can feel the heart because their legs are down the side of the horses, as you well know. They didn't want to pull out of the race. So the stewards have done the right thing. The other option, speaking to John Otham, the head steward, was to not start the race for an extra 5 or 10 minutes. But as anybody who's been around thoroughbreds knows, Emily, that would have been a bad decision because then the horses are behind the gates walking around. They can't come back and be unsaddled. So when you go through what happened, the false start was bad. We'll get to that in a second with Bruce Sharrock. The vet did her job, and that's all you can do. Everybody had the option to scratch. They chose not to. They weren't going to, but that's all you can do is have the option. And then the stewards couldn't really do much else. So then we get down to what needs to happen next around that, and that's where we're going to get Bruce Sharrock to come in, because Emily, from the point of the false start to the point of the race being held, and I've been through this methodically with trainers and jockeys and everybody, I can't see anything that could have been changed in that area to help protect the punters, but
calling it a void race and running it on a different day?
Or running it after the last and all that sort of stuff. And is that fair on the horses, unsaddling them, taking them back in, jockeys weighing back out again? Would that have had a better result? I don't know, but I don't think that was the way to handle it. I don't see any mistakes from the time there was a false start to the time the race was run and completed, or anything we could have done differently. Now the question turns to, how did this happen? And how do we stop it happening again?
Yeah, exactly right. Well, Bruce Sharrock is on the phone to answer some of those questions. Bruce, a very good morning to you. Obviously, people at home, they know what's happened. There's been a false start, but talk us through the protocols and the processes that have taken place since that event on Saturday, leading us up to this morning.
Yeah, hi Emily, hi Mick. Look, firstly to all the connections, the frustration that must have been at an all-time high with what happened on Saturday. I feel for you all. And I guess the focus from our perspective has been about how we remedy this going forward and address whatever has caused it. Mick, you gave a very good overview of the process that led to the false start. My information at this point is that the tests were done pre the race and pre the start of the day. That worked, and clearly something malfunctioned at the time of the race. Look,
Bruce, just going back there, because speaking to the stewards and speaking to other people who work on starting gates, the most obvious way to fix this is to not have supplementary gates. But we need supplementary gates because, speaking to your Chief Operating Officer Darren Balcombe last night, and this is covered extensively in the New Zealand Herald, we can't transport more than 14 gates at a time. I know that sounds ludicrous, but obviously it gets past the long load rules for the open road, and therefore would need a pilot car, which obviously is not something we want to be getting involved in. Is that the main reason we have 14 gates plus supplementaries as opposed to having 18 standard gates that travel everywhere together?
Yeah, it is, Mick, and that's as of today. Look, as of this morning, and I'm sort of jumping to the end here, which is the finding a solution to mitigate this going forward. We're going to make a commitment to ensure that our metro tracks, and there are 3 that remain with gates that need the clip-ons, and they being Awapuni, Trentham and Te Rapa. We will be looking to replace those over the coming months to ensure that this doesn't happen again. Clearly, Trentham will be an 18-gate set up, and Te Rapa and Awapuni will be 16s.
So Bruce, just as of this morning, you're telling us that for those 3 major tracks, Te Rapa, Awapuni and Trentham, the supplementary gates will not be a thing, and we will go to a standardised 18-gate box when needed?
Not 18, it's 16 at Awapuni and 16 at Te Rapa and 18 at Trentham. And so what we're doing is looking to fund those in some way, shape or form. The mechanics of that I'll be working out and ensure that in the coming months, because as you can imagine, they're not sitting in a warehouse so we can wheel them out, so they need to be ordered and put together. But that is the long-term solution to ensure that our metro tracks are set up appropriately for first-class racing.
Bruce, what about protocols for tracks where we still do need to have, because we have race meetings every weekend, those supplementary gates being used? Is it a case that we can ask the starting crew, or what's called the Central District Starting Consortium, to have more testing, or have a mandatory 3 testing openings or something like that before we use the clip-ons?
Yeah, look, again, the team is working through how often we use them. So as of this morning also, we're going to suspend the use of the clip-ons. We're going to undertake a pretty thorough audit and look at the state they're in and see what reliability we can count on going forward. We don't want to have this situation unduly, and look, Group 1 was our worst nightmare. A rating 65, 75, in my way of thinking, is somewhat the same. I mean, at the end of the day, we're a professional racing jurisdiction and we need to be better and we need to eliminate this. So, look, there is a number of things happening both within the CD Race Consortium or Starting Gate Consortium that we're looking at, and as I say, a pretty thorough audit going on to see what needs to happen to provide the reliability we need. The long-term solution, I say long-term, I'm talking a number of months, will be to replace at our metro tracks, Awapuni, Tarapa and Trentham, with permanent on-site maximum gates.
So Bruce, just to clarify this for people at home, for the foreseeable future, until we have those gates at 16s and 18s set up, there'll be no use of clip-ons, and therefore, for all of those tracks, the maximum starting number will be 14?
Correct.
Okay,
Correct.
Bruce, getting to compensation, because I think the first 3 horses home are okay. They've got their Group 1 win or placings, and they've got fair stake money. What about the horses back in the field, who the connections can quite rightly believe they weren't given a fair crack? Has NZTR this morning considered compensation to at least cover their travel to and from the races?
Look, we're considering, and I don't want to use the word compensation, Mick. I want to use the term goodwill payment should we go down that route. I need to look at a whole lot of information. I need to look at what we've done in the past. I need to look at what, when we get all of the information on what happened, whether or not that leads to a goodwill payment to those impacted, and just to what degree throughout the field we do so. But it's certainly being considered, and we'll work through that in the coming days and contact the impacted parties as soon as we have an answer on that. But it's certainly not off the table.
Bruce, over the last 14, 15 months, and we appreciate you fronting up this morning to discuss this, we've had a very bad incident on New Zealand Cup Day at Riccarton. We've had Trentham had a meeting called off a couple of years ago when it was too slick and it rained after the first race. And now we've had this. People watching at home will go, who's accountable for this? Now, I'm not saying anybody should lose their jobs. I'm not getting carried away. There's a lot of emotion involved in this. Some other people are. What accountability is there for this? If a jockey makes a mistake or a trainer makes a mistake, they are fined or suspended. But it doesn't seem to be that when officials or workers, and again, there's no disrespect here for the starting crew, I couldn't do their job. But there seems to be no, for want of a better word, accountability or punishment for these situations. And I think that angers a lot of people, Bruce.
Yeah, look, Mick, to answer that, I think we go back a number of years, well before my time. I have been made aware of an issue at another racecourse where there was a starting failure and that person lost their job. It may have been I guess, someone falling on their own sword. No one's going to walk away from responsibility here, but I think we need to understand this may well just be a mechanical error, and hence the reason for a delay in any firm decision on a goodwill payment is we need to understand what actually has happened here. Now, if there is human error, we need to discuss it. We all live in a performance-related world, and no different to the jockeys and the trainers, and people should be held accountable should it fail. But as we stand here today, there is no person that could be identified as responsible, but investigations do go on. I say investigations, I don't like that word. we're looking into it with Race Group Consortium in terms of what happened with those gates.
Bruce, thank you so much for your time this morning. We're always so appreciative of your transparency with these issues, and great to get your feedback and your ideas around solutions for what happened on Saturday.
Thanks, Emily. And as I say, look, I think where we bounce to straight away from NZTR's point of view is let's fix this long term. And that's the decision made to, as we speak, I know Darren's on the phone looking at getting quotes for the cost of those gates to right-size our metro venues immediately. So I think that's the most important thing right now.
Really appreciate Bruce's thoughts. I think for people at home, that's what they want to hear, that investing in the long-term infrastructure is the way forward. And I think people will appreciate the steps that have already been taken to future-proof what we've got.
Well, let's deal with Bruce's comments first. That's great. What they're doing is instant action. Which is fantastic. And yes, it means restricting field size, which will restrict turnover. If you shrink a field, the turnover goes down, but it is doing all in their power to fix this. Back to the incident, anybody who's tried to wire up their Christmas tree lights or their trailer to the back of their car and make the blinkers work realises an electrical fault can happen anywhere. It's incredibly embarrassing and bad timing, but it can happen. So people shouldn't lose their jobs over this. That's not what we're saying, but there also needs to be an accountability to say, hey, this is your job when the starting gates go anywhere. It is not going to be a problem heading forward. But
you can test them 20 times and the one time you need them, they don't open, or the horses move in the gates and it jiggles the connection. It's such a fine line.
We're sitting in a studio, really, with a whole lot of technical stuff and earpieces, and sometimes they don't work. And this is a very bad example of that, but it can happen to anybody. But I think it's great that they have moved so quickly, and eventually, in the north, we're going to have no supplementary gates. Well done to NZTR. I absolutely, while I don't go around spending other people's money, I absolutely believe a goodwill payment needs to be made to anybody who feels they need it out of that race. I don't want to take a horse from Auckland to Cambridge for that and get a bill. And transportation bills are bloody expensive. And I don't want to get that if I'm in that race. I'm angry enough as it is. So, yes, that money should be spent. I know it's not my money to spend, but NZTR know that, and I'm sure they will do that. To the punters, and these are the ones I feel for. If you had a bet in that race, I spoke to Cam Roger, who is the boss of TAB Entain in New Zealand, and said, what can you do? And they did have talks about, Emily, having bonus bets refunded to people. But there was roughly, with the tab, $500,000 spent on that race. Now, you can't refund that. And let's get this very clear. The TAB and NZTR, or the Race Consortium, are different businesses. The TAB can't be responsible for that mistake, which is only a very small mistake. But every time there's a race, because they bet on races all over the world, and they bet on sporting events all over the world, every time there's a race or a sporting event where something happens, unusually, they can't be responsible for that. The stewards and the club run their races. That's how it works. And if they deem the race was run under fair circumstances, which as best we can work out it was because there was no other way to do it, then that race result has to stand, because the TAB don't get to go, that's good or bad for us. So they thought about it. There was no way to refund all the money, and it's a very dangerous precedent to set. People watching at home go, I don't care about that, I want my money back, and I fully get it. The markets was left open. Now, some people don't like that either. That's the right thing to do, because account holders had the option to trade out of their bet. Most people don't, but they had the option. Some did. And if you wanted to, you could look at the outside three horses and go, well, okay, they've got an advantage, I'm going to back one of them. So the market staying open was clearly the right thing to do, even though it's uncomfortable for people. And yes, it's no good to cash bettors. As I said, I've methodically been through this with every person I need to talk to. And I don't see anything that the stewards or the club, after the false start, or NZTR could have done differently. So that's where we go. That's where it sits at the moment. They have moved to get rid of supplementary gates. We will follow this as we head forward. But as unsavoury as it is, I don't think we can do much more.
Yeah, well, let's park that for now. And as Michael said, we'll be continuing to update you over the coming weeks with regards to those gates, permanent gates for the Premier tracks. Let's move along to the Wellfield Challenge Stakes. This was success for Captured by Love, who was pretty dominant against the 2-year-olds.
Racecourse as well. He hasn't moved. Boston on Captured by Love, found a kick. Poetic Champion trying to gun it down, lay in a bit lower. It is Captured by Love, clear by 3. Poetic Champion, Dream of the Moon, Captured by Love down towards the line, and that'll be 2 out of 2. And how good was that? Captured by Love, Poetic Champion, Dream of the Moon, and then Diablo Blanco.
It was a milestone birthday for David Ellis on Saturday, and Captured by Love's victory, no doubt, was a nice little cherry on the top, a beautiful type, and just love the way when they challenged, this horse found such a good quicken up the straight. It was a very clinical performance.
Looks like maybe our 2 best 2-year-olds are both by Written Tycoon. Obviously, Velocious is, and this one, out of a Schnitzel mare who won her first 2 races, as has the daughter. The option, obviously, because she's not Karaka Million eligible. In fact, 5 of the first 6 home in this race aren't Karaka Million eligible. The option is to go to the Magic Millions, but she's not going. So I spoke to David Ellis this morning. Happy birthday to you, David, for the other day. Not going to Karaka Million. We'll go to Ellerslie on New Year's Day. Ellerslie, New Year's Day for the Eclipse. Maybe for Mata Mata Breeders, then to the Group 1, the Sistema on March the 9th, and they wouldn't mind, it's a long way away, but they wouldn't mind ending their season with the size produce in Sydney. So no Magic Millions, no Golden Slipper, none of that stuff. But she will race on through the summer here and then hopefully head to Sydney. If you're looking at the Karaka Million market, the only horse in there who matters is the second horse, because the rest of them pretty much aren't eligible. So Poetic Champion was okay, but there's a few more to come, a few more Tiaka horses to come, speaking to David this morning, but more and more, we're seeing horses turn up and win races, and outside the ones you have on the top of the market there, they don't seem to be affecting this market much.
Yeah, it's pretty one-way traffic, isn't it? Velocious creating plenty of interest, and don't forget about that boosted option, 4480, to get Velocious, and $3.80, tab.co.nz for all of that info.
Obviously, Opie is your husband. What did he say about her?
Really likes her, yeah. I think there's another one he likes that's stepping out pretty soon, and they're sort of his top 2, but very professional.
Is that a horse called Victress, or he wouldn't know the name, would he?
No.
just on that.
Not Victress, I don't think it's Victress.
They bought 2 fillies.
Probably is a lovely horse too.
They bought 2 fillies, and Victress is another one of them, who they are part of the same syndicate, and they really rate her, and there's a lot of chat for a horse called Do a Dance. So a lot of chat about some of the unraced horses, but they're going to need to get on their bike. We're only 6 weeks out from the Karaka Million. And by the way, talking about Karaka Million, Ellerslie, as we speak, unless you're watching this at night, Ellerslie are having trials. Their first official trials are being held right now. But we've heard that the tickets are
on sale, yeah.
And they're almost sold out. We are heading to Ellerslie for January 27th, stopping it on January the 14th.
Yeah, good stuff. Can't wait for that. Bring on 2024. Well, Trentham Race 3 was resulted in success for Is That So? We can go back and have a look at this very tidy win.
Lincoln's Cruise comes after them, and behind them Is That So? Seamus trying to wind up now, and wider out is Bell Clear. Express Yourself still the leader here, and got a length in front now. Seamus over on the outside trying to wind up the last little bit. Is That So in the middle? Express Yourself, Is That So? And Seamus, here it is That So? Is That So has landed the prize and got some big bets in.
Went right to the wire, needed all of the straight to get the victory, but Is That So gets the nose down where it matters. Tina Komnyagi, she targets these Trentham meetings, and it's very rare that she doesn't come away with a victory, and she gets well-deserved win in the third. 16th start for Is That So. And Clinton Isdale, he does a really good job with his horses.
Yeah, he does. And this horse is now on 132 grand. Look, it's come home in one of those weird Dodd leg race timing anomalies in 31.6 for the last 600, but we see these staggering times quite often in those dog leg races. Pretty good horse though, raced in the Telegraph last year. I think Clinton's probably realistic about where he heads with this horse, because it's not up to that grade just yet. Just on Tina, she's sixth on the Premiership. She's won over $1 million for the season already, and it's only just December. Now, her record season's 1.5 million. I think she'll blow past that, and particularly because a lot of trainers will say, hey, when you come north, we're happy to pid you on. It was a pretty crazy time for the Premiership over the weekend because Warren just won't stop riding winners. Same as Joe, Michael McNabb had a Forza at Trentham, and Craig Grills had, I think, a Forza at Pukekohe. So a lot of our top jockeys are in really good form heading into the summer. Opie, I think, got 5 days starting after Waikato Cup Day, or a couple of race days suspension, so he'll sit 1 week out. But when you look at that list there, it's not a bad list. Like it's a very good senior, strong list of riders. And then we have a good like Ulrika Holmquist is coming back to the country. So we're getting some depth back after a couple of really tough years, I think.
Yeah, there's certainly plenty of quality, isn't there? There, and I love the way that it's so competitive. See, Michael McNabb still $1.70, Warren $3.20, Joe Doyle, all those top three, ultra consistent with what they're doing.
Just on that Premiership, the bookies have got this wrong.
Oh.
Absolutely got it wrong. For a person who just deals in markets, NABA will chase the Premiership. I get that, and $1.70 is way too short because Warren has indicated he will chase the Premiership just as hard as NABA. I don't imagine NABA's going to go to any more meetings than Warren. Now, if it's a straight shootout and Warren is 15 in front, well, that market's wrong.
You're banking on suspensions and, yeah.
And that's comparable. They'll probably get suspended the same amount of times. They can ride at relatively the same weight. They're both lightweight riders who can get down to 53. So,
but Joe Doyle's doing equally as much travelling, you know, and he's in a pretty good position in the Premiership as well. It's great that it's so competitive.
Well, it is great, but if you're watching at home, that's a good bet. Bet responsibly, but that's a very good bet, Warren to win the Premiership, because he's a long way in front. And there's no indications, I've spoken to Warren about it, no indications that either of them are going to chase it any harder than the other one. I think he'll chase it. I think he wants to win it. And I think once we get to the black type season about April, you might see him more on the South Island, but he's already travelling more than Michael to the South Island. So there's your bet for the day.
Oh, love your advice. Well, let's get to Pukekohe because there wasn't just Trentham on Saturday, and we had the Bone Crusher Stakes, and it was the return of Lupo Solitario.
Gets to the outside and Livid Sky is next. They head down the straight, 400 metres to go. Tonya's dragging the leader. Lupo Solitario gets his run through along the inside. Out wider, Orchestral starting to warm up as well. Then Cannon Hill, followed further back by Sabina. Lupo Solitario, Orchestral's going to make this interesting. At the 100 metres, they draw clear to fight out the Bone Crusher. It's Lupo Solitario, Orchestral's coming after him. They go towards the line. Whoa, gee, that's close. Lupo Solitario in a photo with Orchestral, third over Livid Sky. And then we've got a lineup for fourth.
Close is right, that's how close. There was a whisker in the win, Lupo Solitario and Orchestral going head to head. There was a lot of talk in the media in the week about Lupo Solitario and the stone bruise and a few issues, but geez, that was a good performance for a horse that's overcome a little bit of difficulty during the week.
Yeah, let's take them one at a time. Lupo was great considering he had a bruised heel. It sounded like he overreached and got on his heel in track work on Thursday. Denise Guy was really good about it. First of all, she was open with the media and she informed the punters who got to make their choice. Then she didn't panic. She said, we'll wait till the morning. We vet checked him on Saturday morning. It probably didn't affect him too much. I think what affected him was actually Ryan Elliott was almost forced to settle handier than he wanted. He told me during the week he thinks this horse will be far better 2 or 3 pairs back launching over the last 400. And it's sort of half weighted for Orchestral, but he's a good horse. We know that. He'll head to Boxing Day, then
Sets up the Crescetti form pretty nicely.
It does, doesn't it? And he'll head to Boxing Day, then the Karaka Million 3-year-old. So he's going there. Now, Orchestral is also eligible for that. She'll head to Boxing Day and she'll take on Molly Bloom, who's also heading to Boxing Day in the 8 carat. So we have Orchestral versus Molly Bloom in the 8 carat. It's going to be a ripper, along with some pretty good other horses in that race as well. So that Boxing Day race will be crucial to where Orchestral heads. After that, we should go to the Karaka Million, but that's the plan. Speaking to Robert Wellwood this morning. The horse who's obviously we haven't seen on there is Tokyo Tycoon. Now, Tokyo Tycoon goes to Te Rapa this Saturday. So we'll get a far better idea about this market. Just going to the bottom of that page, Ethereal Star. Spoke to Andrew Forsman. She's not far away from racing. He's not sure if this race might come around a little bit quick for her after going to Australia, coming back, having a small spell, and then rolling into her summer. But a lot of good fillies there and a lot of big clashes coming up. Tokyo Tycoon this week, Boxing Day, going to be crucial.
He's such a hard horse to read, isn't he? You've sort of got to take him on trust,
Tycoon.
haven't you? Yeah, he doesn't show you much in his trials. It's so hard to get a line on him.
Te Rapa this week's going to be really interesting for a whole bunch of horses heading forward to the big races. But Boxing Day is shaping up as a real boomer out at Pukekohe.
Yeah, really looking forward to that. Pukekohe race number 1, Mercurial was into the winner's enclosure, gave Bonnie Lass a good run for her money.
Headed up pretty soft out in front and led by a length. Bonnie Lass is poised to pounce 2 lengths away, Uderzo, and behind them next is That's All Fine, and then Digger down to the 150. Bonnie Lass straight up on the outside of Mercurial, 2.5 away, Uderzo, and behind it next then as they head down was Digger. Bonnie Lass on the inside of it. Mercurial's not going away. Bonnie Lass has a fight on her hand. Mercurial's coming back at it. Mercurial, I reckon. Mercurial in a photo with Bonnie Lass. Third over was Digger, and then behind them next was Uderzo, followed over by...
Another really tight finish at Pukekohe, a thrilling finish, and Mercurial gets the better of Bonnie Lass. Gosh, they went head-to-head up the straight and lifted over the line. Mercurial does get the win and gives Stephen Marsh some options heading forward to some of those lucrative races over the summer months.
He said he's going to head to the railway. Why wouldn't he? It's on the same track over the 1,200 metres. If you jump and get handy, maybe it's a place chance. Bonnie Lass was good. She'll improve on that. She actually got in front just before the line and she peaked a touch. Jess isn't a strong whip rider, which a lot of people were happy about, but a lot of people don't like seeing horses hit a lot. So she doesn't tend to get into them too much, and maybe the stronger rider won this race. But also you're putting an apprentice on for a reason. She comes with the claim that brought the weight down, and I think it'll enable the horse to head forward to the railway in good shape. But here's the railway market, the big 3, Babylon Berlin, Sacred Satono, Dragon Leap. Obviously, we haven't seen Dragon Leap for a while. The other 2 raced recently, so make of this what you want. But the set weights and penalties is clearly the key to this race. And then the Telegraph, which is 2 weeks after, which I still believe is too close. I don't think it's good for either race. But the Telegraph.
Would you make it 3 weeks, or what would be your
I would
solution?
make it 3 weeks because 2 weeks is too close, and a lot of people don't want to go. Just the Telegraph's weight for age, so it's a different type of race from the other one, and that would suit a Dragon Leap type horse. Seamus was good the other day too, running home in a very quick time, and he'll go direct into the Telegraph. But yeah, I think it's a really nicely evenly balanced bunch of sprinters.
Yes, it is. Let's get you to the stayers now, and it was the Dunstan Stayers heat, and it was those Cambridge stud colours taking home a win again.
SVR to the outside, further away Cascatella, Cork, and last as a swinger now is Like a Lot. 400 metres to go, Segundo led by 2. Here's Terra Matika coming after it. Salva Verde's running on as well, and behind them Max Schnell, and then Rua Rocks out wider. SVR starting to arrive at the 200. Terra Matika made the lead, 2.5 away. Next is SVR starting to warm up from Segundo, waking away, but Terra Matika first time over ground, and NZ is too good. Terra Matika won at SVR second. Third photos between a very game Segundo all on the outside.
I'd love to know the stats for Cambridge Stud having winners at Pukekohe, because they just go hand in hand. It's not a home track, but effectively for them, they get the results like it is their home track. Interesting horse this, because a European import, of course, purchased for 100,000 guineas, who looks like a nice classy stayer and has got a win here in New Zealand on the board.
You know, Brendan and Joe obviously are a huge part of our industry, but they have invested enormously in Australia and further afield. And you need to do that if you're going to have that elite broodmare band we're talking about, which they're putting together. Pretty good staying type. You wouldn't be surprised if she turns up and there's a factor in one of the cups, an Avondale Cup or something like that, maybe even a Queen Elizabeth. And thought the second horse was really good. We know SVR can stay, and I would have thought that would be a race which would bring him on enormously, and he'll be a factor in the Cups too. There's a little bit of a gap in the Cups. You know, there's room for a good horse to come into them. I wouldn't be surprised if those two are 2 of those horses. Of course, they have the Stayers Championship, which has come back at a week, so it's on Boxing Day now, to enable the horses in that to therefore go on and race in the Queen Elizabeth if needed.
Yeah, it makes sense, doesn't it? Let's get you to a break here on Weigh In, and we come back to some more racing, and it is this time from across the ditch.
Something so strong could carry us away. Something so strong could carry us today.
Today's weigh-in is brought to you by our stable of sponsors.
You're back with us on Weigh In, and we jump into our Australian action from the weekend, and we kick things off with the Ballarat Cup, and it was a New Zealand-bred Quinella as Mr. Envious, Captain Envious, even galloped home in front.
Towards the middle of the course, and then came Captain Envious on Francais at the 250. Just Folk trying to hunt it down with Young Verta, and Captain Envious right down the centre of the course, bumping into Young Verta below the 200. Just Folk up to on Francais, but Captain Envious runs on by. Captain Envious, 2 legs, 3 legs coming clear. Captain Envious won the Ballarat Cup from Young Verta, Just Folk and on Francais. A gap swords drawn. Then
I think the Ballarat meeting comes with a huge asterisk because track conditions started off a good 4 at the start of the day, and conditions just deteriorated throughout the day. Captain Envious, he had no issues with the off track and got home very swiftly. A first black type success, and does the job for the Kiwi breds.
And another one for Seville, who just keeps producing good horses, and this one's out of an Italian mare, which is really unusual. We don't see that often in the breeding of New Zealand or Australasian horses. So look, it's been consistent. It's raced in lots of cups. It was fit, which clearly you needed to be. And Paul Prescott seems to like the New Zealand breed horses, those staying horses. Mick D just having one of those springs where he rides a winner. It feels like every Saturday.
Yeah. Yep, he certainly is riding well. What was it, a treble, I think, on Saturday at Ballarat? We had Group 1 action from WA, and it was the Northerly Stakes, an upset, Dom to Shoot, beating home Zaki.
Top of the straight, went to Maricino, raced about 3/4 clear. They beat off behind them Dom to Shoot and also Zip Away. Zaki's the leader, 100 left to go. Dom to Shoot coming though. Dom to Shoot, McDonald lifting Zaki. Dom to Shoot lunging. They went to it. Nothing in it. Nothing in it whatsoever. It might be Dom to Shoot. Maybe it's Dom to Shoot a no, Zaki, and close up as well, Zip Away in a thriller.
It's pretty unusual to see James McDonald get nutted in a finish. We're going to go to Hong Kong later and we'll see him lifting Romantic Warrior over the line, but Zaki just looked like he was home, and Dom to Shoot's closed from out wide, and it is so hard to beat the WA horses on their own soil.
Oh, I don't think the punters enjoyed it much, but you've got to feel good for Jared Noski. Like, it's his first Group 1. He's beaten J-Mac. J-Mac doesn't need another one. He's got plenty on the in the trophy cabinet already. Both of them got done for excessive use of the whip. As you could understand, it's a Group 1. I mean, you are going to try and get the horse home. I think James was a bit unlucky because the leader stopped and he was left in front on Zaki, and that was probably his plan, but probably not at the top of the straight.
Yeah.
And it just gave him an awfully long time for an old horse to be run down. He was game, but I feel good for the winners. Good on them. It's their first Group 1.
I read
the WA people, they deserve it.
Some comments post-race of Jared Noski. He put the Group 1 win alongside his victories on Black Caviar. So
Black Caviar's first 2 wins, he rode it.
2009. Crazy stuff. Well, let's get you to Randwick, where we had some further success for the New Zealanders, and that was in the Ingham. Lock Eagle took this one out. It was the third emergency who took home the $2 million on offer.
Tractable go head and head, clear from Valana. Then came Lock Eagle from Hinge Surf Dancer, dropped off. Rustic Steel battling away on the rails as Attractable's drawn clear inside the 200 and gone for home. Attractable 2 in front to Lock Eagle. Then came Lion's Roar winding up. Attractable just in front, but Lock Eagle goes to it. Lock Eagle draws level with Attractable, and Lock Eagle ran down Attractable. Lion's Roar third, followed by Kerwin's Lane. Then came.
It's fair to say this horse was just completely overlooked in the market. It brought nice form in behind Detonator Jack, I think. And what about the heavy hitters in the ownership? Jamara Bloodstock, James Chapman, the Chiddicks, Bruce Perry, Lib Pitania, and an amalgamation of the silks you can see aboard Lock Eagle. For Chris Lees, it was a very tidy day.
They're some of the busiest colours in racing. They've got Waikato stud emblems and Rosemont stud emblems, and the Lib Pitania down the side sleeves colours. This is a really good example of how not all horses should be aimed at the biggest carnivals. They eased off this horse and aimed it at the Gong and this race, which probably nobody even thought was on. $2 million.
$2 million, I know.
The Ingham.
Yeah.
$2 million, and I didn't even know it was on till last week. And this horse has won $1.25 million in 2 starts, its last 2 starts, without racing the best horses. That's placement. That's not every horse is going to win the biggest races at the carnival. So this is beautiful placement. I'm not sure if it was a mistake or whether it happened because the horse was sore, or I don't know how it happened, but it bloody
Progeny
worked.
of Lonhro, isn't it?
Yep,
It's a
another one by
lovely
Lonhro. So
pedigree.
I would suggest they bought this, like Bruce has bought it for Lib, and everybody's got involved. And he's only 5 years old. He's now won $1.7 million. So just goes to show you, same as Captain Envious, sometimes racing off carnival. And I think this all the time with horses. If they're not good enough to win the biggest races at the carnival, why don't you wait a couple of weeks or a month and win the big races after the carnival?
With the big money.
Like Eagle's done that.
There's so much on offer, isn't there, when you sort of delve a bit deeper into that programme in New South Wales and Victoria, in fact. Massive news during the week was released with regards to Rosehill and the potential for its sale and what the future looks like in New South Wales. Well, Michael, you had a very interesting conversation with John Massara we're going to hear shortly.
Yeah, so on SENZ Radio on Saturday mornings, we have the Mail Run, which is myself and Louis Herman Watt, and it's always radio's great free form. You can ring people. John Massara, who I believe is one of the biggest brains in Australasian racing, was kind enough to come on, and we asked him what he would do after the shock potential news of the sale of Rosehill. Here's what he had to say. If these numbers are right and all the chat's right, if they can get $5 billion and they've got to spend $1 billion rejigging another place and doing all the things you need to do, if that was all right and you could get the members to approve it, is it good business to you and would you do it?
Look, if you took that view, you would also sell the Sydney Cricket Ground. And you could sell other key core sporting assets for property redevelopment. I think that Rosehill is one of the 2 major racetracks in what is the 4th or 5th biggest jurisdiction in the world, New South Wales. It's something I wouldn't be considering, but obviously the lure of that amount of money, if that amount of money is the sort of money that will flow, but I can't see how it could, except on a very, very long-scale basis, after development, on the sale of properties, etc., and who knows what investment needs to be made to get to that point. But the answer is, it's something I probably would not consider myself.
Yeah, thanks to ECNZ for letting us use that audio clip. There's a lot longer version of it talking to John about lots of things. We'll get to some of those later. You were in Australia on the weekend. What was the vibe from the Sydney people you've spoken to over there?
I think reasonably positive. I think everyone was pretty shocked as to the announcement itself, but if it's for the betterment of the industry, then that's a positive. But the focus was most definitely on making sure that it was for the betterment of the industry, and the process of removing the 7 trainers, where they'd be housed, would they have access to the same facilities they had at Rosehill? But Will Friedman made a very good point about you can't just invest in racing. You have to invest in the community. You have to become part of the community, what the Hong Kong Jockey Club has done. So I think reasonably positive. If that's what has to happen to future-proof racing, then I think the majority of people are reasonably well on board.
I think it was a really big shock. Usually you hear things around the traps.
I couldn't believe when, in that interview with John, I listened to the whole thing, and he says, I had absolutely no idea. I was gobsmacked. How does someone like that not know?
First of all, I'm not sure it'll go ahead because state governments change all the time. It's a very volatile place, Sydney. And one government, like here in Auckland, I'll give you an example, Labor said there was going to be a second harbour crossing, a bridge over the harbour. National now said, no, we're not doing it. And that happens really quickly. You change the state government, because this is 5 years away, they may go, no, we're not doing it. So it all ties into Sydney's west, which is a very growing area, having another metro stop. It's really complicated stuff. And $5 billion is an awful lot of money.
It is.
So I'm not saying it should or shouldn't happen. I don't really know. But one thing I would say, having been through this with a lot of harness tracks, is if you're going to sell anything, my concern is not spending the money well. You blow a certain amount of money doing a bad development, or you don't develop another racetrack, or you put it in stakes and they get won and lost. So 5 billion takes a lot of blowing. It's an awful lot of money. So if that all happens to work, great. NZTR and Cameron George have come out and supported it. I don't think there's any right or wrong. I'm just not sure in a state government set up it's entirely likely to go ahead, because the next government could easily say, no, thank you, we're not going to do that. One thing John did say is he would rather see Canterbury, the other track,
which was a very valid point,
develop, because it's a less popular track, because this is the track where they hold the Golden Slipper, and he wouldn't develop Rosehill. So lots of moving parts to this story. I'm not sure it will happen, but it's really interesting. It's an interesting test case if it does happen, because they're going to need to redevelop some tracks and to build a horse excellence centre, which is basically a training centre.
And where do you do it? You've got to go so far out of the city now to be able to do that. Horsley Park obviously is the place that they're thinking. But
well, even if you do write $1 billion off, you've still got 4 billion, and 4 billion solves a lot of problems heading forward. One other thing we spoke to John about, because he was obviously the author of the Masara report, much of which has been implemented. He said the one glaring thing for him is the Avondale issue. He said, yes, Avondale should be sold and that money used for the betterment of the industry. And he said that's the one thing out of the Masara report he would like to see fixed as quickly as possible. So if you Google it or you go on to SENZ, you can listen to the entire interview. But every time you talk to John, you learn things, and he's very measured and very intelligent in the way he does things. So we appreciate him coming on both shows. Yeah, fascinating man. It was a fascinating interview. We'll get to a break, and then it is to the Hong Kong international races.
Today's weigh-in is brought to you by our stable of sponsors.
Well, let's sink our teeth into the Hong Kong international races, and they most definitely delivered in terms of New Zealand's success. We start with the Hong Kong Mile, and it was a victory for Golden 60.
Golden 60 called upon now, the great horse to the outside, and he went whooshka. It is Golden 60 taking over. Shartin is electric. He's 3 on Beauty Eternal. Then came Namur. Next in then is Soul Rush, but it's Golden 60 for Hong Kong. 4 on Voyage Bubble. That's not a whip, that's a wand. That ride from Vincent is magic. Golden 60, the superstar.
Mark McNamara also magic in the call, and what a training performance to have Golden 60 ready to fire in a race like that, and he just sprinted away from them.
It takes a lot on a racetrack to make the hairs on the back of my neck stand up, and I turned the television up about the 400 because I thought this is going to be good. It was just beautiful. And well done to Sam Beats in Riversley Park. He bought the horse on, sold it from the ready to runs here. That's a huge tick. That's why so many of the Hong Kong buyers come down. They see what is a magic monster of a horse. It's just so beautiful to watch. You see that, you want to get one, you come to Karaka and you put money in people's pockets. That was great. Exactly the same scenario. Maybe not as good a horse, but pretty darn good. Lucky Swainess in the sprint. Again, another ready to run graduate. So those 2 results last night. Here he is. I thought Zach was in trouble. Here he's in the yellow colours. He had to go across heels.
He had to be patient, didn't he, before he could let Lucky Swainess wind up. But once he got clear, he's really, you could see the quality. He just kept winding and winding all the way to the line.
Well, and Wellington down the outside.
Nice.
So Jamie Richards' first Hong Kong international race runner, finishing 3rd. But he's just a wonderful horse, Lucky Swainess. Interesting afterwards, they were saying on track, best sprinter in the world, and congratulations to the team, obviously.
There's another little
Park.
Kiwi trained horse that's pretty talented.
Really interesting conversation over who's the best sprinter. I'm not sure it's Imperatriz, but by the way, Imperatriz's announcement overnight. She's not heading to Royal Ascot. She's going Melbourne-Sydney. So Melbourne-Sydney, potentially sitting up in Everest, but wonderful horse, Lucky Swainess, great for Navara Park. They obviously stand him. They had a good weekend with the press statement. Lots of really good things happening there. So congratulations also to Adrian Stanley from Woburn Farm. He sold that horse. Those 2 victories on HKIR night So good for our sales and so good for our industry.
Yeah, so good. And for our jockeys, James McDonald, he took out one of the features in the Hong Kong Cup on an absolute warrior of a horse. Leaving your own country, going to a Cox Plate, winning a Cox Plate, coming back home and being good enough to be able to win a Hong Kong Cup, I think is remarkable. And the toughness that he shows. I don't know if there's a tougher horse going around at the moment.
Or leaving your own country again, because he was born in Ireland. So he's a horse who was purchased out of there. He's gone all the way to Hong Kong, adapted. He's gone to Australia and adapted. Let's not forget, going the other way around.
Yeah.
Right-handed, left-handed. And then he's come back and done that. Just
a racehorse,
they can
isn't he?
train some of those boys. Like, you know, magical training performance, Golden 60, unusual preparation for Lucky Swainess. And then that first start since the Cox Plate, James at his absolute best. Ryan Moore was really good on the second horse. He put it to James around the bend to try and get him, almost got him. But what a wonderful night's racing. I know you've spent a bit of time in Hong Kong. That just goes instant bucket list when you watch that stuff.
Sure, you get FOMO sitting at home,
I
don't
did.
you?
Did you?
I did, yes. I had it on and I was thinking, geez, there's no place I'd rather be than Hong Kong for even the Jockeys Challenge on the Wednesday. It just looks so much fun. We also had the Hong Kong Vase, and this was a win for the French. This is Junko getting home to success. The French just have horses have just a certain way about them. I think Junko summarises it perfectly. It's that action, the way they get over the ground, and was a nice success for Maxime Guillon. A little while between drinks for the French, so this will be good for them.
When you look at him here, how much does he look like a skinnier, finer version of Americain in the Melbourne Cup? Like just that running with the head extended and down, and they're just wonderful. Trained by Andre Fabre, one of the great trainers of all time. I've actually been lucky enough to meet Andre Fabre, and he's one of those people who doesn't say a lot, but when he says stuff, you're like, oh, wow. And that's his third Vase for Andre Fabre. So really slow tempo, so surprising he could come from so far back to win, but he did it with class. Next week on the show, Em, we're going to have Paul Wilcox, because the trials are being held as we speak. We're going to go through the whole process of Karaka, the comeback, Karaka Million, and also the two big meetings coming up at Pukekohe. So Wilco's sitting in next week to answer all those questions around Ellerslie. One bit of advice for people at home: get your tickets soon. They're going to cap it at 8,500 to 9,000, and the hospitality's almost as
sold
good as
out.
gone.
Yeah, it's some crazy stuff. There's certainly plenty of interest in getting back to Ellerslie, understandably. That's a wrap for us on the show this morning. It's been great to have your company, and we look forward to joining you again next week to do it all again.